board. We were approached by the U.S. Department of Education to participate in a study that they are doing that takes a look at specifically at mature RTI models. We saw this as an opportunity to gain some insight and participate in this. We brought together a group of people as per policy, reviewed the proposal, and that proposal has the support of all members of the committee. At this time, Dr. Lynn Spiller, who has worked directly with the Department of Education on this study, is here to give you a brief overview because she knows that you've got the proposal and to answer any of your questions.
Thank you.
Good evening, governing board members and cabinet. It's my pleasure to talk to you about this USDOE research project, and I just want you to know that the way they approached us was to say, you are going to be given a great honor. It was really interesting. They said people that are invited into this study usually put sound bites on their web pages so that everybody knows they were invited. So the way we were selected is by word of mouth. So I thought it was interesting that word about the good things that are happening in Creighton School District has gotten all the way up to the USDOE in some fashion. So this study is actually very comprehensive, but one of its parameters was to make sure it wasn't a burden to our sites. So what's interesting is, since it's funded by the U.S. Department of Education, it really has a lot of compensation for the teachers in filling out surveys, for the sites for finding the data. I'm providing them the biggest file, but the sites still have to do staff surveys, and students are going to be interviewed and also tested by a testing team provided by the study. The testing team has been vetted by fingerprints and background checks, and so it seems to be very well designed. So the study will not start until after April 26th, and so it will occur in May after all of our AIMS testing, after our universal screeners and our Isella testing. So is there any questions about this study?
Yep, Dr. Spiller, I have a question, and it might be better directed to Dr. Bogner. But I think you mentioned, Dr. Bogner, that we thought we could get some insight out of participating in this. So would you talk more about what kind of insight might we find? Because yes, it'd be great to highlight our district and get this, recognition, but I also want to know what do we get out of.
We're going to be one of how many districts?
150.
Yeah, so the purpose of this research is to kind of look at kind of the progress that these districts have made and what are the key findings in terms of their implementation. We're hoping that those key findings will give us feedback in terms of where we're at, where we need to go with our response intervention model.
We've had some, just working with Dr. Jenkins, who was the liaison to our district, when we started talking about response to intervention, we suddenly realized we didn't have a common language. Like our tier 2 isn't their tier 2, and our tier 3 isn't their tier 3. And when I described to him what our model was, he says, oh, but we would consider your reteach enrich period to be a tier 2 intervention. I said, well, we don't consider it that way because. So it was interesting, and just the way we were talking, that the nation needs a common language about response to intervention. And I think we'll gain insight by being able to be part of the study and reading it in order to understand whether we're implementing as fully as we possibly can.
Great. What other districts are participating in this in Arizona? And is this just school districts, or does this also include charter schools?
I can't answer that question. Actually, he didn't give me a list of the Arizona schools. I actually don't, but I'm sure I can request it from him and find out. I know he said there had to be a certain number from Arizona, but he didn't tell me the list.
Mm-hmm.
So I can request that.
Okay.
So, this is not costing our district money. It's coming out of IDEA funds, the national funds.
Yes, actually, they're giving us money. So it's a wonderful new turn of events. Not only that, but the superintendent said there's 3 things we have to avoid. Keep no identification of teachers, no FERPA violations, and no limit the amount of time it takes our staff to complete the study. So we feel like we fall within those 3 categories. And what I thought was great, that if the teachers take the surveys or provide data in any way, then they're compensated with gift cards that are really, I think they're $50 or $25 or $50, which I thought was if it's a 5-minute survey or I thought that was pretty good compensation.
So, these are children who are identified at
We have
risk.
2 volunteers.
Oh,
Yeah,
Please
yeah,
put us on the
yeah,
list,
I'll
right,
take
yeah.
it, yeah.
These are working with children that are been identified at risk, and to compare them with those just above at risk. Am I understanding?
Why don't you give just a quick overview of the model?
Data that they're going to
Response to intervention model.
So with our response to intervention model, it's tiered intervention. So tier 1 is our core classrooms, which is all students. Tier 2 are students who are in 1 grade level below their peers or frustrational on our universal screeners. Tier 3 is frustrational on our universal screeners, but 2 or more years below their peers. And tier 2 gets pulled out of science, social studies, or specials to get a scientifically validated program in order, and it's called a strategic intervention, in order for them to close the gap with their peers. Our tier 3 students receive an intensive intervention, could be 1 or 2 periods where they're pulled out of core to catch them up. They might be pulled out of another period to accelerate them. So what this study is by USDOE is they wanted to look at the whole first, second, and third grade. So the data file I'm giving them is all of our first, second, and third grade students on the universal screeners in fall, winter, and spring. Then additionally, they're going to test, I believe it's first grade students on a couple of other tests that will be common to all of the 150 districts and schools that are part of the study, because not everybody uses the same universal screeners. And then that way they can evaluate whether our students are remarkably higher or lower than other students like them within the study.
Okay, I'm just wondering how this impacts the special ed.
Special ed students are included in the study. They also are looking to see, I noticed one of the things they were asking for, and I did talk to Dr. Jenkins about, was that he was looking to see that the special ed referrals on the implementation of RTI are decreasing over time. We have some indication that our special ed referrals and placement is decreasing since we've implemented response to intervention, but I haven't completed that study yet.
One last thing. I feel like we've seen a couple requests for research in our district, and we always approve them, and then we talk about we want to get the results. And if I haven't seen them, it might be my fault as a board member that I don't put them back on the agenda. But I'd love to get the results, have those presented to the governing board, so we know, what's what, and we know what we're doing and where we can go with that.
I'll email them and make sure that I get a firm date on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, the next item on our